Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Charts with Dan. We're back here again on a Monday because I'm doing some holiday traveling today, which means that we are once again using the dreaded estimates, but don't worry, we'll make our way through it. And this week, we're going to talk about the opening weekend of Avatar, Fire, and Ash, what we can tell from these opening 3 days, what we can't tell from these opening 3 days, as well as a robust weekend at the pre-Christmas box office, and some surprising numbers for Wake Up Dead Man on Netflix when we get to the streaming ratings. But let's look first of all at the box office for this past weekend. Estimates have Avatar, Fire, and Ash debuting at number one, of course, with $88 million. I've seen some reporting that the actual numbers may come in a little bit above that, but 88 is the number that we have right now. We're going to dive deep into that in just a little bit. David, the latest film from Angel Studios, came in second place at just over $22 million. That represents the biggest opening weekend ever for Angel Studios. They, of course, had a huge hit with Sound of Freedom, but this is the best out of the gate that they've gotten, and they really seem to have found a niche for themselves with these biblical animated features. The Housemaid opens in a competitive third at $18.95 million. That's the latest from Paul Feig, starring Sydney Sweeney, Amanda Seyfried, and Brandon Sklenar. In fourth place is the SpongeBob movie, Search for SquarePants, at $16 million. It seems like the family market might have been siphoned away a little bit by David and a little bit by the number 5 movie, Zootopia 2, which dropped 44% in week number 4 and brought in another $14.5 million. It's now at $282.8 domestic. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 drops down to number 6. It dropped another 63% with $7.25 million, but it's over the $100 million mark at $108.9 million. Wicked for Good drops another 50% and brought in $4.3 million. It's over $320 million domestic. Durandar, which has been doing well in the US and around the world, dropped just 30% in its third weekend for $2.47 million and a $12.6 million domestic total. This is apparently quite a phenomenon, particularly in India, where the film originated. Marty Supreme, that's not a misprint. It doesn't open in wide release until Christmas Day, but it had a fantastic start in limited release and brought in $875,000. Some historic numbers, or at least putting it among some historic numbers that we're going to look at in a few minutes. And Hamnet moves back into the top 10 in its fourth weekend, bringing in $850,000. That brings its domestic total up to $8.76 million. This is the rare 6 poster dropped out of the top 10 graphic with all of the newcomers. You had to squeeze a lot of movies out. Now You See Me, Now You Don't, I think was in the top 5 last weekend, but it has moved out of the top 10 after 5 weeks. Eternity is out after 3 weeks. Jujutsu Kaisen Execution is out after 2 weeks. Ella McKay had a terrible start and is out of the top 10 after just 1 week. The 25th anniversary of How the Grinch Stole Christmas was mainly a one-weekend event. It's out after 1 week. And the IMAX release of The Shining, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, also out of the top 10 after 1 week. Looking at the biggest theater count changes from this past weekend, Now You See Me, Now You Don't lost the most theaters, 1,693 of them. It's in 718. Eternity lost 1,553 theaters. It's in just over 500. Jujutsu Kaisen Execution lost 1,526 theaters. It's in just about 400. How the Grinch Stole Christmas lost 1,515 theaters. It was still in 735. And Predator Badlands lost 885 theaters. It's still in 380. A lot of theaters had to make room for all those showings of Avatar, Fire, and Ash and the other new movies. This is what I like to call our road to recovery. The blue line is the box office weekend average for 2015 to 2019. The red line is 2021 to 2024. And the dotted black line is every weekend this year. The good news is that we were above the post-COVID average. Now, this weekend is strange because sometimes the big movie-going days of Christmas Day and the 26th, the 27th fall on the weekend. Sometimes they don't. They do not this year. And so I think that we're a little bit below average because of the way that Christmas falls on the calendar this year. We're way below, for example, where we were pre-pandemic, but I think that scheduling also has something to do with that. We'll see what the final week looks like when we look at this chart next week, but a strong close to the end of the year after a very mediocre fall. November was okay. October was horrendous. So let's talk about Avatar, Fire, and Ash and what we know about it. As I've talked about before, a movie that opens pre-Christmas, yes, you can look at the opening weekend numbers, but more than any other time of year, that doesn't really tell you much about what its final box office performance is going to be, because so many people go to the movies, or allegedly will be going to the movies on Christmas Day and the days afterward. But we do know that Avatar Fire and Ash had the 9th best domestic opening of the year at $88 million. If it comes in a little bit higher, then it could be number 8 above Captain America Brave New World. We also know that this was the second biggest opener for James Cameron domestically at $88 million, although it is significantly below Avatar The Way of Water, which opened to $134.1 million. And remember, there were some people freaking out about that number, as there are some people freaking out about this Avatar Fire and Ash number. When you adjust for inflation, Avatar Fire and Ash is the 3rd biggest James Cameron opener, behind the first Avatar film, which opened to an adjusted figure of $117.3 million, and Avatar The Way of Water, which adjusts up to $151.5 million. Terminator 2 Judgment Day had a $75.5 million adjusted weekend when it opened all the way back in the early 90s. Titanic opened at $66.7 million adjusted for inflation, but made a lot more than that in the long run. True Lies opened to $56.5 million adjusted. Aliens opened to $29.7 million. The Abyss opened to $24.3 million. And The Terminator opened to $12.5 million. And because people want to make proclamations when a movie opens at the box office, there have been the usual headlines, not as widespread as we saw with The Way of Water, but some headlines talking about, is this movie a flop? Is it flaming out? It falls short of expectations? What's going on? And my answer to that, as it was with Avatar The Way of Water a few years ago, as it was with Mufasa The Lion King last year. Remember how everybody freaked out about Mufasa because it came in number 2 before Christmas. It was a huge flop for Disney. And then the week of Christmas, it came out and ended up doing fine at the domestic box office. We don't know what the overall prognosis of Avatar Fire and Ash is yet. Here's what we do know for sure. It did open in a similar period, somewhat below Avatar The Way of Water. You could say significantly below. And I don't think that that is just the pre-Christmas window, because The Way of Water also had to deal with that. So I think that we can safely say that Avatar Fire and Ash will possibly, or I would say probably, not make as much money as Avatar The Way of Water. How much less? We don't know. We'll know a lot more this time next week, but I think it's safe to say it's not going to make up that revenue. I don't see it exceeding the performance of The Way of Water from here on out, and that's due to a lot of things. It was a shorter layoff. It's not quite as well received critically, although audiences seem to be enjoying it. So the drop-off isn't a huge surprise. And keep in mind with this movie, it may not make $2 billion, but if it makes $1.5 billion or $1.4 billion, hey, you know what? That's still pretty good. And the movie is still going to be okay if it makes $1.4 billion worldwide instead of $2 billion worldwide. We just don't know yet. It is way too early to start making prognostications about where this movie is going to end up domestically or worldwide, because this is the most unpredictable box office window of the season, this whole time right around Christmas. Next week, we'll have a better idea, and of course, I'll be covering it next week. But when we talk about James Cameron movies, it's also important, maybe more important for him than any other director, not to jump to conclusions based on opening weekend, because James Cameron's movies have legs. And what do I mean when I say legs? I mean, if you look at the final domestic total and you look at what the movie opens to on its opening weekend, James Cameron's final grosses tend to be many times more than what a movie opens to on opening weekend. This is a chart that shows you the legs for every James Cameron movie domestically. Now, this is the final domestic gross without re-releases. And as you can see, on average, James Cameron's movies have a final gross that is 8.98 times their opening weekend. The Terminator finished at 9.46 times its opening. Aliens was 8.47. The Abyss is 5.88. Terminator 2, 6.45 times its opening weekend. True Lies, 5.65 times its opening. Titanic made 20.98 times its opening weekend when you looked at its final domestic gross in 1998 after it ran for a year. Avatar did 9.87 times its opening weekend, and Avatar 2 did 5.1 times its opening weekend. This is actually pretty crazy. I didn't realize it until I put all these numbers together. James Cameron has never made a movie that did less than 5 times its opening weekend at the box office. Now, will that streak be broken? It may very well be broken this time, or it may not. We just don't know, and we won't know really until Christmas Day. the 26th, the 27th, the next weekend, and then we'll see what kind of shape Avatar Fire and Ash is in. But it is far too early to make any kind of prediction about the overall health of this movie. Like I said, I think the safest thing to say right now, looking at the opening weekend, looking at the reception, is that this is going to make less than the last movie, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it is a flop or a bomb or a box office disappointment or any of the things that people might want to be labeling it as already after just 3 days, because that's a product of James Cameron and that's a product of the time of year. And so I'll be keeping tabs on, of course, its performance in the weeks ahead. Last week, I asked the members here on the channel what their favorite James Cameron movie was, and we had an overwhelming winner. 59 votes came in for Terminator 2, which was not quite double, but close to double the number 2 answer, which was Aliens at 34 votes. Titanic came in close behind at 32 votes. True Lies came in with 21 votes. The Abyss had 14 votes. Terminator had 11 votes. Avatar 2 had 4 votes. There were 4 ironic votes for Piranha 2, and the original Avatar actually came in last behind the ironic votes for Piranha 2 with 3 votes. So while Avatar may be some of James Cameron's most successful films, they are not among, at least among my members, his most popular films. That would be Terminator 2, Aliens, and Titanic. So that's kind of an interesting result. We will look at Avatar Fire and Ash's worldwide numbers in just a couple minutes, but let's talk about some of the other movies in the domestic top 10. I mentioned that David was the best opening ever for Angel Studios. It also was the 4th best animated opening of the year domestically, behind Dogman, Demon Slayer, Infinity Castle, and Zootopia 2. The SpongeBob movie Search for SquarePants put up the 10th best opening for an animated film this year, behind Chainsaw Man, the movie RezeArch, and the unofficial number for K-pop Demon Hunters. So a real contender there, bigger than The King of Kings, which was a big hit for Angel Studios right around Easter. And we'll see what David does over this Christmas week. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 has now entered the top 10 highest grossing video game movies of all time at $108.9 million. That puts it behind Lara Croft Tomb Raider. I believe it knocked the Angry Birds movie off of this list. The original Five Nights at Freddy's is at number 8. Of course, the highest grossing video game movie of all time right now is the Super Mario Brothers movie at $574.9 million, followed by this year's A Minecraft movie at $423.9, and we'll see what the latest Mario movie does in 2026. I've been tracking Wicked versus Wicked for Good over the last month or so, and this is probably the last time you'll see this chart because the pattern is very obvious. Wicked for Good opened better, but the original Wicked had better staying power at the box office, and the gap between those two movies is only widening. So Wicked for Good is going to finish substantially below the first film domestically at the box office, but neither movie is in financial trouble, and overall I think this is going to be a very profitable enterprise for Universal with these two films. Wicked for Good is now also one of the 10 highest grossing Broadway adaptation films when you adjust for inflation at $320.5 million. I believe it knocked Cabaret off of this list. It is behind Oliver, the original West Side Story, the first Wicked film, which is at number 7, Barbra Streisand's Funny Girl at number 6, Fiddler on the Roof at number 5, The Rocky Horror Picture Show at number 4, My Fair Lady at number 3, Grease at number 2 with $859.8 million, and The Sound of Music with almost double or maybe over double what Grease made at $1.65 billion. I'm sorry, $1.69 billion. A massively successful film. We've got so much more to cover, but before we do, I'm going to thank the sponsor for today's show, HelloFresh. It's Christmas this week, which means you're probably hosting people at your house or cooking for a potluck or maybe just traveling. And the last thing you want to do after all that's over is to go shopping for your own meals. So why not let HelloFresh take care of all of that, delivering fresh ingredients and great recipes right to your door? HelloFresh is the #1 meal kit in America, and their menu has doubled in size, bringing you 100 options each week, including recipes from around the world. Their week after Christmas menu includes one-pan pineapple salsa chicken tacos. I've made HelloFresh's tacos before, and they're delicious. And for the first week of 2026, you can start off your New Year's resolution with an all-kale chicken Caesar salad or enjoy barbecue cheddar pork burgers. When it comes to cooking, I'm generally what the French call les incompetents, but the recipes for HelloFresh are foolproof, and when I say foolproof, I mean the fool is me. The recipes are easy to read, the ingredients are all right there, and the cook time is usually less than 30 minutes, which means that you can get a great, fresh, home-cooked meal fast and kick back and relax to end 2025, or maybe after you spend a little too much time and effort ringing in 2026. And if you're looking to eat better in 2026, 91% of HelloFresh's customers say that they feel healthier when they eat with HelloFresh. The best way to cook just got better. Go to HelloFresh.com/DanMurrell10FM right now to get 10 free meals plus a free breakfast for life. One per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as a discount on the first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. That's HelloFresh.com/DanMurrell10FM to get 10 free meals plus free breakfast for life. So that's what's going on domestically. Let's take a look at what's happening around the world, which is all markets outside of the US and Canada. These are the top 5 films internationally, and Avatar: Fire and Ash was dominant with $257 million. It did well in China, not as well as Zootopia 2, but certainly good for a Hollywood movie in this day and age. That helped to drive that gross. Zootopia 2 still maintaining a very strong international presence. It dropped 41.5%, but brought in another $76.7 million. Durandar, as I mentioned, is doing very well around the world. It dropped 33.3% and brought in $13.5 million. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 brought in another $7.9 million, and Wicked for Good re-enters the top 5 with just over $4 million internationally. When you take those international numbers, you combine them with our domestic numbers, we get the top 5 films worldwide, and Avatar: Fire and Ash debuts with $345 million. Not too shabby for a movie in just a few days of release. I think if it was any other franchise but Avatar, people would be talking about how amazing that opening is. Zootopia 2 brought in another $91.2 million. It's now at $1.27 billion. David brought in $22.1 million. The Housemaid brought in $19.1 million. Both of those movies largely driven by their domestic openings. And Durandar brought in another $16 million. It's close to $100 million worldwide. When you look at the biggest worldwide opening weekends for the year, Avatar: Fire and Ash had the second best behind only Zootopia 2's $500 million opening. And again, that was largely driven by the movie's popularity in China. So Avatar: Fire and Ash opens bigger than a Minecraft movie and Lilo and Stitch, both of which were billion-dollar films from this year. It opened bigger than Naja 2, although Naja 2 had a couple of days of release before its official quote-unquote opening weekend. Jurassic World Rebirth, Superman, Wicked for Good, The Fantastic Four: First Steps, and How to Train Your Dragon round out the top 10 on that chart. And worldwide is a big play for Avatar: Fire and Ash, so we're not only going to be tracking what the movie does domestically, but also what it does internationally. I mean, obviously it's going to hit $500 million pretty quickly. I think it's very safe to say it's going to hit $1 billion, but the question remains after that, how much over $1 billion is it going to go? And will that be enough for them to decide to make Avatar 4 or maybe Avatar 4 and 5? That'll be a discussion between Disney and James Cameron. But this is not a movie that is on the road to ruin unless it falls off a cliff completely over Christmas week. There is no pattern that suggests that's going to happen. Not in the history of this franchise, not in the history of the holiday, not in the history of James Cameron as a director. Odd things can happen, strange things can happen, but nothing suggests that this movie is heading toward a wall or a cliff, just a very lucrative holiday week. All right, let's take a look at the top per theater averages for the weekend, and Marty Supreme was dominant in this area. It opened in just 6 theaters over the weekend, but brought in $145,833 per theater. That's one of the best per theater grosses of the century, and we're going to break that down in just a couple minutes. Is This Thing On, which is the latest film from Bradley Cooper, also opened in 6 theaters and brought in $24,166 per theater. Then we had Avatar: Fire and Ash, which brought in over $23,000 in each of its 3,800 theaters. The Voice of Hindra Job is in 4th place. It opened in 2 theaters and brought in just over $18,000. This film is Tunisia's submission to the Academy Awards this year, and it's a dramatized version of events, but features real emergency audio from a 6-year-old girl named Hindra Job in Palestine who was trapped in a car while fleeing Gaza as Israeli forces advanced. She has since become a rallying point for those opposing Israel's military action in Palestine, and this is a kind of a combination of real audio and dramatized events. And in 5th place is Resurrection, playing in 7 theaters, which brought in $8,128 per theater. And as I mentioned, Marty Supreme, one of the best per theater averages, well, the best per theater average by far of 2025. It absolutely annihilated the Phoenician scheme, which was number one at $93,000 per theater back in May. $145,000 is a lot more than $93,000. That bumps the Encampments down to 3, Friendship to number 4, and Rosemead to number 5 at just over $50,000 per theater. And when you look at the top per theater averages over the last 10 years, so 2015 to 2025, Marty Supreme put up the best number since La La Land back in 2016. La La Land brought in $176,000 in 5 theaters back in December of 2016. Then we have Marty Supreme's opening per theater average. Asteroid City from Wes Anderson's in 3rd place. Then we have Best Picture winner Parasite at number 4. Steve Jobs, which got some acting nominations, is at number 5. The Revenant is at number 6, a multi-Oscar nominee. Uncut Gems, a movie from both Safdie brothers, is at number 7. It brought in over $100,000 per theater in 5 theaters. Then we have The Favorite at number 8, a big Oscar winner there. Call Me By Your Name, also featuring Timothée Chalamet, is at number 9 at over $100,000. And Moonlight at number 10, an eventual Best Picture winner at just over $100,000 in 4 theaters. Not all of these movies were multi-Oscar nominees, but many of them were. And I think this is pretty good company for Marty Supreme to be in as it heads toward its wide opening weekend on Christmas. And not only was Marty Supreme one of the best per theater averages of the decade, it was one of the best per theater averages of the century. So these are the best opening averages from the year 2000 to the year 2025. And there are a lot of kind of special circumstances here. At number 1 was The Princess and the Frog. Disney used to open a lot of their animated films in 1 or 2 theaters before they went to wide release. So it brought in nearly $400,000 back in November of 2009 in just 2 theaters. Then we have Frozen in November of 2013 in just 1 theater, which brought in $243,000. Kevin Smith's Red State in March of 2011 comes in 3rd at $204,230 in 1 theater. This was part of his traveling road show, so it was kind of a combination screening and live event. That's why I said some of these are sort of special events. They're not all created equal. The Grand Budapest Hotel is probably the closest to a traditional limited release film from Wes Anderson on this chart, or one of the closest to a traditional limited release, at just over $200,000 in 4 theaters back in 2014. Then we have La La Land there at number 5. Atlantis, The Lost Empire, another Disney movie from 2001, is at number 6. We have the limited release opening of American Sniper from December 2014 at number 7, which brought in over $158,000. Then the limited release opening of The Master at $147,000. Brother Bear, another Disney film, which opened in 2 theaters, and Marty Supreme with the 10th best per theater average for any movie this century. And again, the best number that we have seen since 2016. So a really impressive start to Marty Supreme. We'll see how it does going forward. Looking at the top films in limited release this past weekend, which I define as 1,000 theaters or fewer, Durandar was number 1 at $2.47 million. Then we had Marty Supreme at $875,000. Hamnet comes in 3rd place at $850,000, but in over 600 theaters versus Marty Supreme's 6. The Secret Agent from Brazil in 133 theaters brought in $335,000, and Sentimental Value is back on the charts in 122 theaters at $148,000. 4 of these films, not inclusive of Durandar, are big-time Oscar contenders, and that's often what we see in limited release toward the end of the year. Well, we are almost to Christmas, and so I decided to make today's Charts with Dan trivia question Christmas-themed. How the Grinch Stole Christmas was back in theaters last weekend and did some okay business, and it is one of the most enduring recent Christmas films, one of the ones you see most often this time of year. So my Charts with Dan trivia question is, Jim Carrey's How the Grinch Stole Christmas is the highest domestic grosser with the word Christmas in the title. What is the second highest grossing film domestically with the word Christmas in the title? I had to go pretty far down the list to find it. It's not one of those things that seems obvious, or maybe it is. I'll give you another second to think. If you want an extra hint, they may have some talent in common. Pause if you want more time to think of it, because here comes the answer. It actually also stars Jim Carrey. It was Disney's 2009 version, a mocap version of A Christmas Carol, at $137.8 million. I think it was in the 500s as far as the highest grossing films of all time domestically. But the second one, so really Jim Carrey has the 2 top domestic grossers with the word Christmas in the title. Go figure. We're also approaching the end of the year, and I always like to take the temperature of everybody here on the channel about what they thought of the box office year so far. And so my Charts with Dan member poll question for this week is, what was the most surprising hit of 2025? A box office hit that you didn't see coming, or maybe one that you thought was going to make a lot of money but made more than you anticipated. Put your favorite or your answer in the comments of the member poll right now. If your answer's already there, please upvote it instead of leaving it twice. It makes it easier for me to tabulate the results. I will reveal the results on next week's show, and next week's question is going to be, what was the most surprising flop of 2025? If you are not a member here on the channel and you want to vote in this poll, you can check the description below for how to become a member, or you might be able to hit a button that says become a member depending on how you're watching the video. You don't just get to vote in the member poll, you also get custom badges and emoji to use down in the comments section, and you get early access to some of my videos. So yeah, I'd love to have you become a member, and I'd love to hear your voice in this poll and in the polls that I do going forward. This is the 2025 fall holiday box office, so all movies post Labor Day. Wicked for Good right now is at number 1 at $320.5 million, though depending on how Zootopia 2 does over the Christmas holiday, it could reasonably take over that number 1 spot by next week, or maybe it'll be Avatar: Fire and Ash. We just don't know. The Conjuring: Last Rites is in 3rd place. Demon Slayer: Infinity Castle is in 4th. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is in 5th place. Those are right now the only movies to break $100 million, although Avatar is close behind. Predator: Badlands currently at number 6. Avatar: Fire and Ash enters the chart at number 7. That bumps Black Phone 2 down to number 8. Tron: Ares down to number 9. And One Battle After Another down to number 10. Now You See Me, Now You Don't off the fall holiday box office domestic chart. Looking at the 2025 annual domestic box office, Zootopia 2 moves up 3 spots from last week to number 6 overall, so it's moved ahead of Sinners, The Fantastic Four: First Steps, and How to Train Your Dragon, and I think Avatar: Fire and Ash should be on this list by next week, which would knock Captain America: Brave New World off the list. Wicked for Good's at number 5 with Jurassic World Rebirth, Superman, Lilo and Stitch, and a Minecraft movie rounding out the top 10. And looking at the 2025 worldwide box office, there has been no change from last week as far as ranking. Zootopia 2 is still the second highest grossing film of the year at $1.27 billion. Unless Avatar really closes some gaps, I think it's going to have a hard time overtaking Ne Zha 2 to become the highest grossing film of the year worldwide. Lilo and Stitch is at number 3. A Minecraft movie and Jurassic World Rebirth are at numbers 4 and 5. Demon Slayer: Infinity Castle, How to Train Your Dragon, F1, Superman, and Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning right now make up the rest of the top 10. So that's everything that's going on at the box office, but I also want to take a look at the latest in the world of streaming, where there was another big movie that made a debut last week, and it might also be a little too early to read into the tea leaves about its opening week numbers, and that is Wake Up Dead Man, which is the newest Knives Out movie. It was number 1 on the Netflix charts, which covers December 8th through the 14th. But I've got to be honest, the views were a lot lower than I expected. It wasn't even one of the top 5 movie debuts this year on Netflix. It brought in 20.22 million views, which is far less than Glass Onion brought in when it debuted on Netflix. But there is one key difference, I think, between Wake Up Dead Man and Glass Onion, which is that Netflix dropped Glass Onion a couple years ago on, I think, December 23rd, which is right in the heart of that Christmas window when people are home and they're watching things and they've got a little bit more leisure time. Whereas they dropped Wake Up Dead Man much earlier in the month of December, where people are probably a little bit busier. Maybe they're traveling, they're out doing holiday shopping. They might not be focused on going to sit on the couch and watch a movie. It's one of the reasons why the box office pre-Christmas is also smaller. So I'll be very interested to see what the numbers are on Wake Up Dead Man, with the newest Netflix numbers drop tomorrow, and then the final one for 2025 the week after that, because it could still make up that ground. It's just a much lower opening than we saw for Glass Onion. At number 2 is the debut of the newest series starring Rowan Atkinson, Man vs. Baby, which brought in 19.13 million views. It actually made a play for first place. Sean Combs' The Reckoning holds very well at number 3 at 17.93 million views. My Secret Santa is at number 4. Stranger Things Season 5 is at number 5 with 11.16 million views. Of course, we get a new drop of episodes on Christmas night, which I'll be watching and reviewing right here on the channel. Jay Kelly, the newest movie from Noah Baumbach, starring George Clooney and Adam Sandler, opens at number 6 with 9.05 million views. Then we have K-Pop Demon Hunter still hanging around the top 10 with another 8 million views. Troll 2 at number 8. The Super Mario Brothers movie returning to the Netflix top 10 at 7.96 million views. And The Abandons Season 1 at number 10 at 7.57 million views. And when we look at the most watched programs of 2025 on Netflix, Stranger Things Season 5 has moved into the top 10 at 94.44 million views. That number might fluctuate a bit as new episodes are added, but it's cruising toward that 100 million view mark. That drops Exterritorial out of the top 10 for now, and of course I'll be tracking Stranger Things over the next few weeks. Let's take a look now at the latest numbers from Nielsen. Now, unlike Netflix, these are domestic numbers only. They are not global, and they are delayed by about a month because I guess that's how long it takes Nielsen to compile all that data. So this covers the week of November 17th through the 23rd as we were leading into Thanksgiving, but not quite into Thanksgiving week. The number one most watched streaming movie was Netflix's In Your Dreams at 9.31 million hours watched. Wicked makes a return to the top 10. I think it was back on Amazon and brought in 8.66 million hours watched. The Marksman's at number 3. Frankenstein is at number 4. K-Pop Demon Hunters still hanging around the top 5. How the Grinch Stole Christmas is at number 6 as we got closer to Thanksgiving. Playdate on Amazon is at number 7. The Carmen Family Deaths on Netflix hits the charts at number 8. At number 9, this is kind of surprising, but I think this moved over to Netflix, which is why we saw a surge in viewership. But Blue Beetle, the DCEU film that not a lot of people went to see, is in the top 10 at 5.6 million hours watched. And Netflix's Champagne Problems basically ties Blue Beetle also with 5.6 million hours watched. Looking at the most watched streaming shows for November 17th to the 23rd, Stranger Things was number 1, and again, this is before its drop of new episodes. It brought in 28 million hours watched, so a lot of people catching up on the series. Next week, I believe, we will be getting the numbers for the new drop, the first drop of Stranger Things episodes. At number 2 is the Netflix original series The Beast in Me. It almost took that number 1 spot, 27.6 million hours watched. Landman returns to the top 10 at number 3 with 19.9 million hours watched in its new season. Absentia on Netflix debuts at number 4 with 17.6 million hours watched. Then we have Grey's Anatomy and NCIS at numbers 5 and 6. Law and Order returning to the top 10 at number 7. The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives at number 8. Bluey at number 9. And Gunsmoke in the top 10 again at 11.15 million hours watched. And these are the top shows when you look at watch time per available episode. So you take the total number of hours watched divided by the number of episodes available to watch, and that's how you get these figures. The Beast in Me is actually at number 1 with 3.46 million hours watched for each of its 8 episodes. Then we have Landman in a distant second place at 1.66 million hours watched per episode. At number 3 is American Revolution at 1.57 million hours per episode. I believe this is the latest documentary series from Ken Burns. So a lot of dads watching over this pre-Thanksgiving week. All Her Fault is at number 4 at 1.21 million hours per episode. Miss Rachel comes in at number 5. Stranger Things is at number 6 at 825,000 hours per episode. Absentia is at number 7. A Man on the Inside returning to Netflix at number 8. The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives bringing in just over 400,000 hours per episode at number 9. And Tulsa King rounding out the top 10 at 336,000 hours per episode. And that's what I've got for you on this week's show. In addition to all of the releases that will be in theaters coming up over the Christmas week, there's even more hitting theaters and streaming in the week ahead. First of all, tomorrow on Tuesday, Eden, which was that very below-the-radar Ron Howard film, hits Netflix. You can also watch Five Nights at Freddy's 2 via digital rental and premium video on demand. And Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere tomorrow via digital purchase and premium video on demand. On Wednesday, Christmas Eve, we'll have the preview shows for a lot of the Christmas movies that open officially on Christmas Day. The Plague will also be hitting limited release on Wednesday with a wide release to follow on January 2nd. It's a very interesting film. You're going to hear a lot more about it on the channel as I wrap up some of my favorite movies of the year. Father, Mother, Sister, Brother opens on Christmas Eve in limited release. This is the latest film from Jim Jarmusch with quite a cast, as he often does with his movies. Then on Thursday, Christmas Day, Marty Supreme officially opens in theaters theaters around the country. So we'll see if it can keep up that momentum from its limited release opening. Song Sung Blue opens in theaters around the country. This movie stars Hugh Jackman and Kate Hudson as a husband and wife duo singing Neil Diamond cover songs. It's directed by Craig Brewer. I had a chance to check it out. I'm curious. I could see audiences embracing it, and I could see them rejecting it. It just depends on which audiences show up to see the movie. Anaconda also opens wide in theaters on Christmas Day, starring Jack Black and Paul Rudd. I also got a chance to see this one, and I will have my review of it right here on the channel when the embargo lifts tomorrow morning. No Other Choice, which is the latest film from Park Chan-wook and a really, really good film, opens in limited release on Christmas Day. The Testament of Ann Lee, which has generated a lot of Oscar buzz for Amanda Seyfried, opens in limited release on Christmas Day. And as I mentioned, Volume 2 of Stranger Things Season 5 hits Netflix on Christmas night. There will be one more drop of episodes, which is the series finale, which we'll see on New Year's Eve, but you can catch a few more episodes after you've opened your gifts on Christmas. And on Friday, you can catch Begonia on Peacock and The Life of Chuck, which is hitting Hulu. I've got no more numbers for you before Christmas, so I hope you enjoy your holiday week. As I mentioned, I'll have my review of Anaconda right here on the channel tomorrow. I will have my review of the latest Stranger Things episodes. I'm aiming to try to get them up the morning after they debut because I'll be back in town by Christmas night, and I'll try to watch those episodes and get you my thoughts. And with everything happening with acquisitions and deals trying to close, I always travel with my gear, so even though I'm going to be on the road, if there's a major breaking news story, I will also bring that to you this week. And I'm prepping my best and worst list of 2025, which you will see here on the channel next week as we close out the year. And I also passed the 1,000 video milestone here on the channel recently. I asked the community via a community post what you wanted to see, and I got a lot of great suggestions. But one thing I saw a lot of was people saying that they wanted to see me do a physical media collection video. I did one shortly after I launched the channel almost 6 years ago, but I went back and I did my entire collection again because it has grown over the last 6 years, and I think it's got a shot. I'm editing it now. I think it has a shot at maybe being my longest video ever. I mean, we're talking maybe 3+ hours because I want to talk about every movie that I have. So I'm aiming to hopefully get that up by the weekend if I'm able to get the edit done, but you can also look out for that and a whole bunch of stuff here on the channel, the latest in movie news, reviews, box office, everything that I do here. If you like what I do here on the channel, please consider subscribing, hit the thumbs up, leave a comment, tell your friends, help the channel grow. But most of all, thanks for giving some of your time to this video. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.